Hello. It's been a long time coming since 2022 ended, but you finally have my opinions. I apologize so much. Oh my god, this was supposed to be my project for finals in December, and I just completely underestimated how much work it would take to write the script and record the script and get the background footage and get the music going, and I have not had a spare half hour to work on Melovania stuff for the last 4 months. So I'm sorry, but I prioritized. I didn't give up on it. I said, when I get a shot, I'm gonna use it and I'm gonna get this thing done. So I'm hoping this came out to you in May or something, but I'm recording it in April. Pretty crazy weekend, actually. We'll talk about it in the future, but I have now done it. I recorded the whole script, and it's out. It's in my computer, and you're gonna hear my opinions. Finally, sweet opinions. I can let them out into the world, and I hope you enjoy them so profoundly. What is my first video of the year? Well, let's get it on. Here comes the first one. The battle for 10th spot was tense, and it took a certain conviction to give it to the budget price casual multiplayer title. In terms of Kirby's alone, it was pretty hard to decide between this and Kirby 64. That game had a good head start over the others, setting the tone for what my year would feel like. Slightly janky, post-apocalypse, but with loads of heart, charm, and many reflective moments. But coming back to it to reconsider it for this list was tricky. I didn't give it a lot of time, even though I was enveloped in my playthrough. Nothing about the 100% puzzles was really calling me back. I get sort of overwhelmed with the Dreamland puzzles, honestly, though this is much more manageable than Dreamland 3. Not quite as doable mixed with horrific as Dreamland 2, I imagine, which those ones I can do. This is no dishonorable mention, though. Kirby 64 is cute as heck. It was my last new mainline Kirby to finally play, and I was just amazed how much having Ribbon, Adeline, and the King, and the D around just gave for the sense of friendship and chummy warmth that the game has. It's literally nothing else in the series to me. It's just a warm blanket. But moving on to the main course, Dream Buffet came out to little fanfare as part of the already loaded 30th anniversary festivities, but immediately hit the spot with its rich quality. You can check out the stream we did with my friends back in the channel's VODs. I had so much good to say right off the bat. The dessert thing could not have been tastier. In true HAL fashion, the food-themed tracks are delightfully detailed and full of visuals to appreciate each time through. In a year full of Mario Kart DLC tracks desperately lacking the polish of the main game, it was very easy to feel just how high HAL sets the bar for themselves in terms of graphics. The whole feel of the game is high quality, and although I prefer to play on my Lite, the HD rumble on my normal Switch Joy-Cons just feels incredible as you're trekking through frosting and picking up little strawberries. Just each little one is like a blip blip in your hands. It's, oh my god. It was so easy to get wrapped up in for hours on end, and even now I'd get stuck in it. It just kidnaps me sometimes. I've spent 20 hours in that game. I've gotten through about a third of the unlocks, which I think means I've done around 40 rounds of playing, and in all that gaming I've only 5 or 6 times felt like it was legitimately unplayable from lag, which is a really big step up from previous Kirby multiplayer on Switch. Honestly, for what it's pivoted to look like a new golden age of Kirby this year, early Switch Kirby felt like one of the lowest points in the series, between unpopular design choices with Star Allies and downright bad online experiences. Team Clash was strictly unplayable for me on Wi-Fi, which can support things like Splatoon fine, and matchmaking for Fighters 2 just didn't pull through when I was playing it in summer 2021. Dream Buffet is not perfect, but damn if it's not an improvement. Seriously, this game could have been dead on arrival if not for a step up in the online department, and they stepped. Speaking of those dozens of games, and dozens of unlocks. Let's talk about more reasons this is one of my favorite Kirby multiplayer games. They really nailed the grindy format. Randomized orders for tracks meant that I'm always happily wandering from one meal to meal without thinking too much about the gameplay, and that's probably for the best. I've seen many YouTubers say that like, oh, the game's cute, but it's really frustrating, and I don't really know what they mean. Maybe randomly using your position to jank a la Mario Kart is tough when you're trying your best to win. I would certainly get that, but for me, Dream Buffet hits the Splatoon Turf War sweet spot where I'm definitely trying my best the entire way through, but honestly, I don't care who wins. It's the very best thing I could ask for in a comfy multiplayer experience. The jank is there, and I have no idea what's going on sometimes, but chasing down my friends, eating all the strawberries, and getting new unlocks in the podium scale is yet to get old. On the closing note, the copy ability situation is getting pretty spicy. I really like the simplified moves and choices of what types are in. Needle having its Forgotten Land forward-moving aerial dash move was super nice and cemented this as a forever Forgotten Land era spin-off. Burning being back though is just horrifying. It means nothing but the worst for copy ability historians. After almost 20 years, it's back. Is Freeze gonna come back too? Will they redivide the throw moves into Backdrop and Suplex Jr.? It's horrific taxonomically. Jelly is wonderful though, and I've debated making a video on it for the desire for a new slime enemy, and to go with it many times. Though I dunked on Kirby Fighter 2 for its battle line earlier, I thought the creativity in that game was actually pretty top notch, as an honorable mention from 2 years ago. There's some semblance of single player, and couch co-op could save it for me someday. I actually love its vibes, and the invention of Wrestler was really good too. So, not to end on a bummer, but what a bummer it is that this game doesn't have couch co-op, by the way. Like, this easily could have been my new air ride if I had proper, like, 4-person co-op in Dream Buffet, but hey, it's a good little game. I really like it. Alright, here's a healthy dose of whiplash, tonal whiplash for ya. Number 9 is Katana Zero. I got carded at the Target self-checkout buying this and was so confused for a moment before I realized. Oh yeah, this wasn't just some retro wave eShop code card, this was a gritty, M-rated retro wave code card. I feel the need to get the heavy nature of the game's content out of the way first. You've got substance abuse wreaking havoc on people's lives, hardcore manipulation in a psychiatrist's office, mentions of unspeakable violence against women, and more. I won't be showing any footage of anything besides packing and slashing in this trailer, nor really touching on anything besides familial abuse in this review, but mature-rated games call for mature-rated self-care, and timestamps are in the description if you need to skip ahead. Now, the brutality of Katana Zero's days did not take me out of the experience, rather, the artful dialogue and palpable stakes of it pulled me in. I was always properly mad at the right people and carried a thirst for vengeance throughout this extremely immersive gameplay story mix. It can genuinely feel like you're taking Zero's life into your hands as you navigate tricky conversations and perfect each combat setup that comes. Action is incredibly precise and demanding in a format I can only really describe as Murder Celeste. You try short bursts of killing over and over again, with a really satisfying level of freedom in what you can launch at who, when you can use your time warping power. When pulled off right, it puts you at the heart of this tightly choreographed action movie climax that you direct yourself, while failing, somehow, doesn't feel that punishing. You get a quick VCR-style rewind and a chance to see why you failed before launching right into it for take 2. It's snappy, it feels great, and it actually fits really well with the overarching idea of looping. Levels are presented to you in the menu as some outside figure watching the game unfold on VHS tapes, and considering that the game does not hide at all how much mind twistery is canonically going into Zero in order to produce his rewind effect, this works great. When levels suddenly jump straight into cutscenes or small meta fake-out glitching, I have the hardest time putting it down. On top of that, stories where some broken, highly dangerous grown-up suddenly is responsible for a kid is just one of my favorite things in fiction. There are actually a lot of examples now. This main plot development is another key thing that kept me just so warm while playing this game. Zero isn't just a grit man in Gritland. The story sees him make his depression apartment a safe place for a little girl whose parents are so negligent or abusive that she spends most of her time just wandering around your apartment building. The parts of the game that rest most deeply in my heart are the moments of quiet reflection in the apartment, listening to the track Rain on Brick from the incredible soundtrack after Zero's off-the-walls day as a hired killer. And this is when his life starts to fill back up with a warmth worth protecting. It is really worth noting, however, that the story did actually let me down in a big way with its illusion of choice. Something like Toby Fox's non-canon bad guy chaos route would have been much appreciated as an extension of defying orders and, taking the life of Zero into your hands with the conversation choices compared to what we got. I felt that the immersion was so strong and the dialogue was so compelling and the choices were so real that by the time I realized my decisions didn't matter, I was pretty bummed. I was really feeling some Undertale going on, but that aside, fantastic game. Oh my god, I was hooked. Oh my god, I should play Katana Zero again. If there is anything that becoming a Zelda fan late in life has taught me, it's that everyone likes the series for different things, and each installment knocks a different aspect of the Zelda experience out of the park. My favorite part has always been the exploration, and item progression makes Link's Awakening one of my favorites. I never thought I'd get the appeal of the linear action game Zeldas, but characters and beautiful, homey environments make Skyward Sword my real favorite. Oh my god, I didn't see that coming at all, ever, in any universe, and, I didn't want it for myself, but here we are. So when at the end of my journey through the whole catalog, I arrived at evil Skyward Sword with Twilight Princess, how did I feel? This is the cool Zelda. Dark is one thing, but it is such a cool game. The spectacle of bosses like the giant plant feels great, but even small things like clunking around a big magnet ball and iron boots feels sick as hell. The hookshot feels meaty and powerful. The wind fairy powered boomerang feels like casting a spell, and small things like holding the lantern are just so aesthetic on the hero of Twilight that it's just the coolest. What's better than walking across a field, turning into your persona, and bounding across it? What's cooler than getting Epona from the Ingo race, rescuing him from some jerks, and jousting them off a giant Twilight bridge with her to save a child? Therein lies my second favorite part of Twi-Pri, the characters. Meaningful character relationships and the emotional story beats they help create give the game its deepest, truest feeling of cool. The theme of responsibility and the idea of Link being an adult for good this time runs deeply and spoke to me very directly just at the right time in my life. What brings this to life even more is the Twilight Princess manga. It's legitimately one of my favorite manga series, and it gives such intense life to all of the characters, from Midna to the evil goobers to the village kids. It's so threatening but personal, and just the action has this emotional charge and these stakes, and it's so blush and beautiful, and Ocarina of Time handled adulthood in a fantastical way. It just handed it to you. Majora's Mask dealt with the pain of the broken childhood that this caused, but Twilight Princess finally sits you down and walks you through what becoming a dependable adult is meant to feel like. It's the village entrusting you to protect them by sword. It's wandering into a challenge way, way larger than you and just doing your best with it. Most of all, it's riding onto that bridge and saving Colin because somebody has to. And I'll tell you, it felt fucking cool! Number 7. Nerve Axon Game. If Axiom Verge is what people felt when they played Super Metroid in the 90s, then I get it. I get why Metroidvanias live on, not just as exploration games, but at shots at recreating those feelings. I myself had a profoundly deep and personal experience with Super, but it was nothing as evocative as a game compared to this. This is a niche gem. You need to be in the mood for dark, crunchy, for retro, and for exploration. Exploration for sure. It's solid for crunching around and item progressing with none of the compromises of post-Super Metroids. I forget which power-ups I cried over specifically, but yeah, I was in the Melovania zone playing this. That's a great skeleton for a game, but how does it make itself unique? Well, Trace is just kind of a guy, but boy, this world. The massive computer women, the little drone buggies, the imposing buggy bosses, it's a whole lot easier to make friends with than Zebis or ZDR in my opinion. The ultimate triumph here, however, is atmosphere. Oh dear me, the atmosphere. The dungeon areas with their stacks of bodies made my skin crawl immediately, and the gorgeous animation and detail on things like the consciousness egg save points really make me feel in it. The emotional highs are really high too, though. I was absolutely spellbound by the near surface areas with their alien skies and incredibly rich environments with plant life and otherworldly colors, and just the music on those areas is so strong. It is just a higher high than anything in Super. Just those are the absolute highest points between Super and Axiom for me. Exploring the idea of consciousness and having a built-in randomizer means that in an alternate 2022, had I more time to dwell on this game, it could have gotten as high on the list as top 3 for me. Like other Metroidvanias that I'll mention, it's just my first impression of a game that I plan to replay for pretty much the rest of my life. It's got the neato drone buddy, it's got all this lore that I don't understand, it's got consistent sequel support from a devoted creator. I am far from done exploring the fruity, juicy weirdness of Axiom Verge. Unfortunately, I do need to throw on the complaints here. That jacket dash move just doesn't feel right to me. It just doesn't feel like the upgraded jacket dashes don't feel like they work for me the way that the game design thinks that they're supposed to feel. And worse, it seems like they're the best way for dealing with some of the late game hell robot enemies, and just, oh my god, I almost stopped the game after an awesome couple of days playing it just because they annoyed me so much. It's half because I just don't like the unpredictable enemies and stuff, but like there was just I couldn't get it. I was mad. I was royally mad with the dash and the robots and their weaknesses that I didn't know. I almost gave up, but I pushed through, and yeah, it's a good one. It's a real good one. If there's one reason that Pikmin 3 elevated the series from a nostalgia trip to a legitimate newly beloved franchise of mine, it's the immersion factor. The title screen? Breathtaking! The UI? Delightfully spaceshipy little bubbles. The SS Drake is my beloved escape pod home. Everything new brings the game to life more, including the 3 new captains. Adding characters I prefer and upping the immersive sci-fi feel sank me very, very deep into it all. Playing was already very tender due to the unrivaled pain of losing Pikmin, but now I get so into it that I legitimately would be haunted by my mistakes long after the session was over and drown my sorrow in fruit juice. Thanks to moments like these, in 2022, I felt my Wii U finally come into its own. Pikmin 3 on Switch is tempting, but for the first time in my life, I can say that the gamepad is what elevated this experience. The Wiimote and nunchuck technique created the perfect mind control experience that I adore when something like Skyward Sword is behaving just perfectly. At these times, I loved the secondary functions on the gamepad. Having incoming video messages appear on the pad was a cute little Nintendoism that never got annoying, but the real meat and potatoes was the touchscreen map. At least once per in-game day, I would desperately grab that pad, freeze time, and scour for missing Pikmin. It put me even deeper into my Captain Mellow headspace, desperately analyzing the data to relay life-saving info to my team. These features might have been annoying in a long game, but at long last, this actually felt like a win for the gamepad. In the end, this was my first time ever seeing credits in a Pikmin game. I credit this very strongly to the game's rollout of events. Happenings like hunting down a new Pikmin color, rescuing a captain just to lose them again, or getting closer to the mysterious Olimar really kept me going. Pikmin's immersive gameplay requires a deep kind of courage, and never before have I felt brave enough for late game. Heaven knows I'm still stuck on the scary sewer cave in the first game. But in 3, not once did I shy away from my task. Even when the awe-inspiring final 2 bosses handed out legitimate tragedies and horror stories respectively, The whole entire experience of getting Brittany, Charlie, and Alf through their days was one that never lost its appeal for me, and put the nail in the Pikmin coffin that Bloom, and many years of dabbling, had slowly been crafting to fit my body. 2022 is over. We have COVID vaccines. They succeeded at nuclear fusion, and I like Castlevania now. This was my very, very first year of playing these games, and Castlevania is great! Seriously, amazing! Castlevania was not very easy to rank, however, and here Aria and Symphony sit together in 4th/5th tied. Let's get into Aria of Sorrow and Symphony of the Night. Honestly, my first impression once I actually had a game in my hands was not perfect. I could not believe how simple and stiff the combat was. Worse than that, once I started getting exploration items, the key to the lime pie of Metroidvanias, I felt they were kind of generic? Underwater item, double jump, a slide. Compared to the flavor on each and every one of the Hollow Knight upgrades, I was kind of shocked just how bland Igavanias felt. This feeling lasted about 2 minutes. My first game was Aria, and once things got cooking, they just cooked and cooked and cooked. Bad Form has the honor of being the first Castlevania upgrade to make me cry, and I got it right around midnight on my birthday. If you don't know about that bit, it's like I cry when I get upgrades. It's a lot. It's just kind of a thing in these item progression games. You'll figure it out. Now I've already replayed Aria, and I just know what I already knew. I'm gonna be replaying these games forever and falling more and more in love with them as they go. So how do I rank them? Well, they're not really as high as they deserve to be, and someday on my 15th run of Symphony, I will look back at this like, really? 5th, 4th? But there was honestly a long part of the year where I just kinda forgot what the appeal of Aria even was. I beat it fast and left myself in the clock tower of my second file. When I picked it up, I was like, what was the appeal point here? What kind of aesthetic even is this? It's not dark, it's light. I thought I was gonna love the clock towers, because I love clock tower stuff, but as of now, they're kind of my least favorite section. Getting another, better replay going on the Wii U answered that pretty quickly. You see, Symphony's atmosphere spoke to me immediately. Every hallway is just lovely. The colors go way harder than they needed to, and the pixel art is just the best. Best of all, the sky is this deathly purple, and every time you get a shot of the outdoors, it's like, oh baby. This is where I started to find some appeal in Aria too, but it's the opposite. There's something now called Dawn Goth, or maybe Soma Core, that's been breathed into the universe, and it's this. The beginning area is so delightfully pale and dawn-ish, it's almost icy. I know it's meant to be an eclipse, right? But something about exploring the underground water areas, and it's felt like the heart of Aria is this pale, eerie, gloomy feeling. It's just awesome. I don't understand it, but it's so cool. I know elements like this are just going to keep growing on me, so I'll just leave it with those positives for now. Now, how do I feel about the Castlevania action I once called stiff, you might be wondering? Well, good question. It's like my favorite action ever, actually. Once I played some more Castlevania, I just got it. Honorable mentions go to Super Castlevania 4 if you don't play Castlevania games like I do now, which I played as a warm-up for Bloodstained Curse of the Moon 2, which is pretty good. Only barely lost out on 10th because I struggle with 8-bit graphics generally, and it was trumped by the Cake game. Those games are pure masochism, by the way. Classicvania, if Souls games are an Arctic expedition with a dagger around every corner, Classicvania is walking over fucking coals. Everything will kill you all the time. One misstep, and it's already painfully over. It's the best! I was hooked instantly. The words to me are deliberate and endurance. Classicvania gives such a particular feeling that I even think about when I'm going through tough weeks at work. It's okay. We all just gotta slow down. Do the Castlevania walk through this one. Throw that whip at whatever comes our way and remember where the chicken is. I think Classicvania may have even had a stronger initial positive impression on me than the Igavanias, because that instant and constant payoff is so strong, but it's so hard. And even though I've had happy days in Circle of the Moon too, I need to come back to it as a stronger person later in life. Right now I'm half Richter and half, I'm just pretty much using Maria mode in Rondo. But back to the special little winners. It really, really helps these games' case that Alucard and Soma were already my Blorbos before I even played these games. I constantly have to fight the feelings for Alucard allegations, and Soma is my son now. I signed the papers with my lawyer on Tuesday. They're just both little gender blobs. They're just awesome characters, and they make the premises of their games really work. One huge strength these games have over the other great Metroidvanias is definitely the character moments / story beats, in my opinion. It doesn't take much at all to set up some awesome reunions and showdowns in Aria especially. I didn't really intend to care about the RPG elements of the game. I didn't think that the story or leveling system could possibly be deep enough, but both seriously kept me hooked. These games may lack the tight combat design of Classicvania, but doing that old school crunchy combat and getting level ups for it is pure drugs. Castlevania has very, very easily joined the ranks of my favorite games, somewhere around the same tier as Zelda in like the high B tier, which is a spot of honor. Of honor. I am so ready for this next year of playing it. So now a little bit of a break before we hit the top 3. This is a special, special place. Like the kind of power I'm expecting all these games to grow and, develop into as I replay them. These fantastic 7 games and honorable mentions I've already brought up. Like, that place of excellence is somewhere that these 3 games started at. And I tell you, while writing this, each one of them spent a significant amount of time in first place in my mind. Like, I spent months thinking that each and every one of these 3 was going to be number 1, and they really fought their way up there. They earned it. They are just 3 incredible games, and I'll get into that soon. But before then, one last honorable mention that was actually nerfed because it was too powerful and just banned entirely. Splatoon 3 came out this year. It's hard to even consider it a game, which is why I didn't bother ranking it, because it's just an experience. I'm new to Splatoon, I only played 2 post-Turf War, and getting to play a new game with my friends on an awesome Switch Lite for the first time, and do Turf Wars, and everything was just so good about Splatoon 3, but you think I can compare Axiom Verge to ranked turf battle flippery? Like, it's just apples and oranges to me, and I just, during the writing of this, couldn't process ranking Splatoon. But oh my, the music, the characters, I can't believe how much I love Deep Cut. It's so fun. I really love the campaign. Excellent campaign. I'm really, really looking forward to Side Order now, because I'm not recording this in 2022. And boy, yeah, they are honorably discharged from this list. Way to go, Splatoon 3. Now we're at the big dogs. The Castlevanias could very well way surpass these games someday, but for 2022, Cave Story was the one I thought for sure I would give the crown to for the vast majority of the year. One more time honorably mentioning Kirby 64, because these 2 games really set the tone for my year. Upbeat vibes, melancholy, wintry wastelands, life coming back to these little groups of weird, unlikely friends. That was 2022 for me, personally. But I think online, this game gets talked about a lot as like a mark in history, more than something you'd actually want to grab up as a side-scroller enjoyer. So let me explain to you just how well this little gem holds up. Cave Story is one of my favorite examples of games as art for the perfect way that all of its pieces come together to make an experience, with a capital E. To start, you're an amnesiac robot exploring a very groovy cave system. Doing so means using the game's mega satisfying gun system, where each encounter is a chance to both upgrade your shooter or lose that strength boost through sloppy play. Then, once you meet the Mimiga, which I like to translate as ear havers, I don't know what the actual etymology is, but That's how I read it. And the LGBT side villains harassing them, you'll be sucked into their brutal yet hopeful battle for freedom. There are key parts that move together to keep the game exciting. The story beats inspire the musical and aesthetic tone of each area. The battle in those areas are your way to kick some ass for the cause, and increasing gameplay difficulty matches your personal investment, rising stakes with the story as it goes along. Sometimes you even get to make decisions that will seriously impact your choice of guns and the ending, though you're probably going to need a guide for that. All of this makes Cave Story one of the most video games of all time. It sounds good to play. It feels really good to play. You feel good when you're playing it, or sad. Sometimes very, very sad, achingly. But that might be what sticks with you the most. I'm not being cutesy about the synergy comments. There are some intensely powerful symbolic moments where the wills and the memories of characters are carried on in the guns that you hold that they gave you, and every moment of gameplay afterwards is made stronger for it. The expressive ability is not quite as good as something like Undertale, but if you loved that kind of personal, immersion, synergistic, crazy feeling, this might do it for you too. I thought that getting more into story in games as I got older meant playing more RPGs again, but Cave Story reminded me that sometimes there's nothing more motivating than something that can be conveyed through simple running and gunning. A new Kirby game came out this year, one that aimed to reinvent the series while using the specific aesthetic of abandoned commercial and industrial buildings that I specifically adore. Some of you probably thought that this was an easy peasy top of the list just by design, but oh boy, you have no idea how hard this game had to work to get up here. It began around 8th, then it climbed a bit to 6th, before I just completely fell in love with it on my replay, which still did not get it easily to the top of the top tiers, but here we are. First things first, I love 2D Kirby. 3 of my top 6 favorite games of all time are 2D Kirby. Despite the gameplay not demanding it, the modern style of copy abilities were surprisingly deep and easy to find your favorite moves in. Things like flying, downward beam, and the aerial sprinkle move on ice literally defined this series for me. Now they're going to be gone for a while, and honestly, I am completely fine. This might be better. 3D is not always better than 2D. New isn't always better than old, immersion isn't always better than complexity, etc. But this, to me, this is probably better. Thanks to the dodge roll, fights have this awesome requirement that you read your enemy throughout the entire game, not just the finale or arenas. It might come down to mashing your favorite move in the end, but evasion alone did so much to keep me interested minute to minute to minute. What happened here was not just a simplification of copies, but a serious reconsideration of what would be good for them. And going forward, what would be good for Kirby, and yeah, this is really fun! Having more engaging action is a big step up, but Kirby has really always been about that feel to me, and this one feels fantastic. Kirby just looks so perfect and flickable, running around in its fancy little hats, and sometimes even with a gigantic sword on his shoulder? Despite the copy purge, all 12 abilities are really appealing. The puzzles with them feel really great too. The action and wit just get married in this addictive little blast of bright color in Treasure Road. It's the kind of linear arcade trial that I usually actually hate, but I just have to touch those rare stones. 100% in the game sounded kind of tiring. I definitely shy away from it usually, but thanks to Treasure Road, Waddle Dee Town diversions, and the mental breakdown, this is far and away the most fun I've ever had going for completion. This is all great in the context of the series, but what about the game itself? What about Forgotten Land? If you want to know all of my thoughts, you're gonna have to be patient, keep your ears peeled a little bit longer, even though I postponed this video a preposterous amount of time already. But here's what I think now. This is a delightful game. The gigantic positive energy among my friends and just everyone I talked to about it was so memorable. Kirby 30 was just a magical time. I love Elfilin, I love the Waddle Dee emphasis, and I'm way more into the post-apocalypse setting than I actually thought I would be. But honestly, I myself am really still waiting to see Kirby return to Dreamland. Trust me, it's whack that I have another abandoned mall in the Kirby style. Abandoned malls are like my favorite, but all in all, I still feel about this how I did at first. The game's atmosphere feels a little too cute to be properly cool, and a little too real to feel like a collection of Kirby worlds. It's meaningful, that's for sure, and it's growing on me, like, trust me, but I have this unshakable desire for the next thing. Now that HAL has proven they can fill up an atmospheric and detailed world with objects we're familiar with, I want to see them do it again, entirely from their imaginations in the world of dreams and marshmallows and nonsense. I just have to see more fantastical locations in this awesome, rich, high-quality 3D Kirby style. There are times in life where people say, oh, just trust it, just go with the flow, just dive on in and it'll make sense as you go. As a kid, I hated hearing this because so often, no, it does not work out, especially when you've got anxiety and like a small comfort zone and stuff. Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze finally made me understand what going with the flow should feel like. For the first 5 or so times I sat down to play Tropical Freeze, I just suffered. The relaxing summertime vibe was just perfect for me. The platforming was excruciatingly tricky though. I'd never play Donkey Kong Country, ever. I reached World 2 and was content just replaying Windmill Hills and the Maple Leaf one, hoping to grind my skills up. Then one day, deep in the fall, after I dropped the game for the entire summer, I got the strongest craving in the world for it. I felt this fire deep down in my belly to push through until I had befriended the game and I could replay it whenever I wanted to. Like nothing. I picked up the Kongs, I returned to World 2, I charged through to the end and had one of the most magical moments of my gaming career. I wrote this script around World 4, after beating a water level called like Bioluminescent Bop or something like that, when things were really taking off. The water-themed minecart level had me feeling true adrenaline as mechanic after mechanic was being added to a tight, atmospheric level where any slip-up in reading what was coming meant dumping dozens of balloons into the ocean. I was on the edge of my seat with my eyes glued to the screen, finally having the reactions that the game expected me to have to stay in the groove. It was exciting and joyful and just deep. Playing DKC feels just like it looks. It is so colorful and cheery with all kinds of trees and animals and seashores and caves to bop through, in and over as fast as you can. You go bump when you land on an enemy. The Kongs go woo when you find a bonus room. You get to thwack up that victory barrel like a lot. In Tropical Freeze specifically, new things are handed to you one by one, making for this super kinetic immersion. David Wise's music loosens you up like rum punch. Patterns of bananas and collectibles guide your attention like a little melody, and wacky platforming mechanics get carved out, flung down from trees, and just erupt from under the ground to keep you on your feet. Like happy Kongs leaping from vine to vine, going with the flow in this fruity-ass game was a rhythmic trip that spoke to me on like every video game level. Reflective undersea grottos, triumphant avalanche mountain raids, slippery tests of grit in the factory, and big ol' party beats like nothing else left me with a whole lot of memories. Having beaten it all a while ago and having been able to reflect, I can say that this was one of the most impactful games I've ever played. It was like the ultimate linear game experience, where music, mechanics, and my own reactions stayed in this perfect sync for hours on end. I had so much simple joy getting into Donkey Kong this year that I have now had to coin the term getting Connecticut Clarked for when I fall stupidly in love with like a simple, happy little round, simple little platformer like Kirby or Donkey Kong Country, when I'm normally like, oh, my tastes are so deep. I like atmosphere, and I need like a story, and I need like a dark setting, and it's got to be like in space, and oh, I bet your indie game's not sophisticated enough for me. And then the monkey comes around, and I'm like, well, that's it. I'm getting married. You have no idea how long I've been waiting to record this. I'm so happy I can tell you that I love Donkey Kong Country. It's been a rough time getting into the other games, but oh my god, there's no putting it away. I have a crazy passion for this series, and I listen to Donkey Kong music all the time, and I think about Donkey Kong every day, and this game just gave me so much joy. Oh my gosh.